Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the June meeting of the CNI Committee. Do you believe it's June? Wow, where did the time go? I just wanted to make a brief statement to acknowledge of the tragedy that's happened in our community today that I'm sure you're all familiar with, and we just want the community to know that they're in our hearts and in our minds, the families of all of the students involved. It was a very tragic incident, and we're holding them very close to our hearts. Yes.
If I could just add, just for the viewing public, that we've posted on our website tips for parents and families in talking with children regarding tragedy. We also have in all of our schools administrators, school psychologists, social workers, and counselors available should your child be struggling emotionally with the information to support you as well.
Thank you, Jen, for adding that. That's very important. Okay. Mary Jo, would you please verify that the meeting has been posted?
Yes, it has.
Okay, thank you. Are there any citizens that would like to address the board this evening?
We would, is that right? Oh, okay.
No? Okay.
You're looking at it.
Okay, before we begin our meeting, I would just like to inform you that our board president, Joe Como, has just recently realigned board committees, and so we'd like to welcome Karen Reinachek. She's our new member of the CNI committee, and Joe Como has taken himself off the committee because he's president now, and he will stay on F&F, but you know, you can just do so much when you're the president. So we welcome Karen, and congratulate Joe on being our new board president. Okay, let's approve the minutes. We have minutes from our last meeting.
I move for minute approval.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second, okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. Any questions, comments? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, we've got some exciting bright lights before us this evening. So Ryan, would you like to introduce our bright lights, please?
Good evening, everybody. Here to have we have two presentations tonight for Bright Lights, and so it's exciting. The first one is going to be focused on our media centers throughout the School District of Waukesha, and our second one is going to be about the high school France trip with some of our report and highlights. So our first team is a team of media specialists. I'm going to let them introduce themselves in a little bit more detail, and specifically their programs in a little bit of detail. But it was a couple of months ago that we had first connected, and we just talked in big picture about media centers. And if you look at the way that the world has changed and technology has changed and the way people access materials and books, it's not without thinking about, obviously some changes have occurred in our media center. And what's exciting is tonight's presentation sort of covered the top 10 things that you may or may not know are happening in our media centers throughout our schools. Both of our reps tonight are here to represent the middle schools, but at the same time, they kind of speak in general in big terms about some of the media center supports. We also have some guests on the audience that are here that work in the role as well across different schools and would be able to be a part of any conversation as well. So I'm just going to turn it over quickly and make sure you push the button on your microphone, and we will get started. We also have a presentation that we'll be showing on the board.
Yeah. Mark, you're going to put that up there, right? First of all, my name is Jill Wagner. I'm the Library Media Specialist at Horning Middle School. And thank you very much for letting us be part of your agenda night. And myself and Margaret here and the rest of my department are very excited to share with you some of the exciting things that are happening in our library media centers. So without further ado, it is the top 10 things you may or may not know about your library media centers. Number 10, the Library Media Center is a place that belongs to everybody and provides us with the tools to find answers. What we want our media centers to do, we want it to be the center of our schools and the center of our learning. And we want to provide a fun and safe and welcoming environment. And we really feel it's important, and this is something we always have to work on, is that we're providing consistent material, non-print and print, for all different types of learners, whether they're a lower level learner or higher level learners. Number 9, library media specialists are teachers. We are all certified teachers, and most of us have our master's degree. We teach on a daily basis. If we aren't teaching in our library media centers, we are actually in the classrooms teaching. It is usually up to the teacher that we're supporting that if we are actually teaching, whether it's in their classroom or in the media center. Number 8, we are technology integrators. We collaborate and we plan with teachers and we attend grade level meetings and PLCs. Our teachers are so busy, we cannot expect them to be the experts on all the different apps and presentation tools that are out there. That is where we come in. We are the ones that are the experts. We are the ones who are teaching these apps and these tools to the students. That helps alleviate some of the burden on their plate. And number 7, all of our media centers offer a variety of different ways for students and staff and the community to get involved. Some of those ways could be intergenerational book discussions, book clubs, library teen councils. We also have Waukesha Reads, some family fun nights, to just mention a few. And number 6, we are constantly providing building and district professional development. Not only in our own our own buildings are we teaching our own teachers what is available to them, but we're also involved with district professional development during those days of PD. We are also highly involved with Waukesha 1, along with our Vanguard teams. We are all part of our Vanguard teams. Margaret?
All right. Hello, my name is Margaret Ottened. I'm the media specialist at Butler Middle School. I'll take over with number 5. We have personalized learning spaces. We've all done a lot of work revamping the library. It no longer is the quiet place where you're shushed and told to sit down and do your work. We collaborate, the kids collaborate, we all really work together. We have a lot of new movable furniture. We have beanbag chairs, we have saucer chairs, and we just recently at my school, we have a bookshelf we redesigned as like our iPad Genius Bar, and the kids love it. They come up and they'll sit and we work together. They can move things around. It's a great way for the kids to accommodate their own needs within the library space. Number 4, we're information specialists. These are just a few of the big things that we use in the library and in the classrooms. We promote a lot of the online databases, the encyclopedias. We use BadgerLink, Wisconsin's online library. Troubleshooting, we do a lot of troubleshooting. One of the great things about being in the library is we're very visible. I like to think of the library as the beating heart of our school because everybody comes there. The teachers come there, the students come there. And the great thing is we're always there for them. They know that at any given moment they can walk in with their MacBook, with their iPad, or with their issue about a printer, and we can help them. We're readily available. We play an important role in Waukesha 1. We help plan it, we organize it, we manage it. We're there for the rollouts, and it's amazing. It's a great time to see the families, to interact with the kids, and we're really excited about it. And digital citizenship, this is huge. We just created this great curriculum. We hope to roll out next year, K-12, to really hit home with the parents, the students, and the entire community that we are really active in educating the kids about digital citizenship, what it means to have a digital footprint online, and privacy and things like that. Anything you want to add?
Any questions at this time for us?
Mr. Baumgart.
I think you really hit on a nerve on the last one, so
Yep.
I think at some time I know I would like to see what's involved in your digital citizenship training, or whatever you want to call it, because I think we've had discussions about the needs for some of that stuff.
Absolutely,
And
we've been
I would
networking.
be very interested in seeing what's included in that.
We would love to share it.
But, Ryan, work on that.
Yeah, we were just at the last Waukesha 1 meeting, and where the principals were just introduced to this too, and this is something that they are going to agree upon, I believe it's like in another week or so, right?
The document's outstanding. Just got our first look at it, and we're at the stage of ensuring its application. We have processes that we do now, but as we do something new and the comprehensive level that's been developed is really strong. So not only do we want to see what it looks like at the middle and high school level, but also at the elementary level, and how do we ensure that this comes through with some follow-up. So we have a pretty good binder. We could actually throw it in a Friday packet because it's pretty well complete, but we're at the stages of what are the final touches of making sure it's in practice.
When it's ready.
Yeah.
I see some other librarians in the audience. Maybe they'd like to come up to the table and join us this evening.
I sure can. Please come on up. This is Mary Beth Alt, or Ast, her old name.
I know, she's out to me.
Well, you guys can, and this is our South Library Media Specialist, and Melena Colpine. She's our Library Media Specialist at West High School, and we have Marilyn Kaline from Central Middle School here.
Well, welcome. Good to see all of you. Oh, some of us go way back, don't we? Good to see all of you. Thank you for, sharing that information with us, but I guess I'd be remiss if I did not indicate to you how concerned I am about the fact that these wonderful things happen perhaps differently in the elementary school, if they happen at all. So I don't know if there's something.
Well, and that's true because there isn't a library media specialist there.
Yes, and frequently I visit, elementary schools, and I see this beautiful facility, unfortunately, not used
It
as
is,
it should be used,
right.
And I know it's staffed with an aide, but not a librarian, and
Right, and it's not a teacher.
not a teacher.
Yeah.
And I do wonder, how do our elementary students, learn how to do research and learn about how to find things in the library that's just so important.
And we're actually seeing that at the middle school.
Sure you are.
Where, where before, when there was a library media specialist there, they came to us with quite a lot more than they are now.
Of course they do, of course,
so-
of course. So then you have to go back, you have to actually teach them.
Reteach, yeah.
Well,
And go
not
back to a
reteach,
part,
but
yeah.
teach the
And yeah,
skills.
just to start introducing.
Sure.
I just wanted to add that they come also with a lot of bad habits as far as searching, and
Sure.
I think, and it's probably just a matter of having coped, well over the years, but I thought at middle school, I would have been a lot farther ahead with my curriculum and agenda, but sadly, I've had to go
Sure you did.
backwards, so.
Sure you have.
The missing voice here is Jill Wickham, who is our
Yes.
elementary person.
Yes.
I wish she were here this just wasn't the night for her, but she could speak more about that. I think the thing that she keeps the spaces in working order, because with the number of spaces she works with and the amount of staff she works with, that's really the most she can do. She works really hard to meet with staff and to make sure, I know she has asked every principal in the elementary schools and STEM where she works, where she is their resource. I know she has reached out to them, asked to be at staff meetings, asked to do professional development. She's asked to be on the PSI schedule in the summer, so that the teachers at least are aware of the resources that are there. But Barb, you know what teachers go through. I know it's really hard for them to recall all that and to know it the way we know it. And so, and having worked at that level, Mary Beth and I came from there.
I know you did.
We see the whole, and it makes us very sad.
Sure
So.
you do. Is there anything that you're doing at your schools that you'd like to highlight for us? Mary Beth, you've just done something very interesting lately. I think you should share with the board.
Who, Mary Beth?
Mary Beth,
With
with the literature.
the nonfiction.
Yeah.
So, yes, I've worked very closely with a AP English 11 teacher, and we have promoted nonfiction reading, and together we came up with Lit Circle books that the students have read, and the discussions have they were phenomenal. And I've been very pleased with how that process has gone. So it was a great experience. Mr. Gray he was able to come and see that too, so. And another thing that I wanted to include too, sometimes it's when you are in a building, it's that just-in-time learning, that moment of, oh, I can help you find that. And that can then lead to further connections with the students. And in fact, I was at a softball game last night, and a student came up to me and said, oh, I know you from the South Library, like, you've helped me before. So making those connections with the students and being in a building, I think that's really, really important. And I'm a parent of a first grader, and I'm afraid that he's missing some of that at our elementary school. And I'm definitely concerned as a parent, too, not having an elementary library media specialist for him, so.
I'm going to piggyback on that. Because I worked at Rose Glen and Saratoga before I went to West, my students are my students again. They recognized me as soon as they walked in the door, and they saw the relationship there, so that was really important. They remembered it, they saw me, they knew me as a helper, and that was really helpful. To piggyback on what happened at South, something we did at West this year was, I also did groups. I worked with Jill Anderson, who's a social studies teacher, and she likes for her students to read, whether it's fiction or nonfiction.
She does.
Yes, she does, absolutely. And we matched students with a book about the time period they were reading about. And we put them together in groups by their time periods. And we did this twice, once each semester. And so while they may not have read the same book they were discussing the same time period. And our goal for these students was to increase their ability to answer inferencing questions, which is one of those big level questions. So the kinds of questions we asked them, we said, you know, how would your character relate to technology today? Or how would your character feel about what would they like in our current society? What would they dislike? They can't pull that from the book. They have to kind of look for evidence and say, this is what I know about that. Another thing I'm really, really proud of is the amount that we're trying to get our students connected with the Waukesha Reads program. I represent the district on the steering committee for Waukesha Reads. And this year we had all 3 high schools reading. We had intergenerational book clubs at all 3 high schools around the book. And next year we're really excited because of the focus on, the book is Collected Stories of Edgar Allan Poe, which allows us to go even into the middle schools. Typically Poe is read in the middle schools or has been in the past. And so we're really hoping to get more of our students involved in this incredible community-wide event with so many arts and writing and speaking opportunities. So I'm very excited to be bringing that to the students at
Well,
West.
thank you. Any of our committee members have anything? Dr. Langell?
Thank you so much for being here and for kicking it off, you know,
You're welcome.
Jill and Margaret, and for adding to it. I'm glad to see all of you. When I see a librarian, I think books. Absolutely. I mean, I know you're a media specialist, and that's important, and our students need you. But the fact that obviously we have a void in our elementary schools bothers me a great deal, because we see students in libraries staring at their screen, and they're surrounded by books. And I mean, I know I'm on a crusade here, but I think every time you say, well, I was able to introduce students from a classroom to do this reading, you know, I salute that, because the big fear, and, you know, certainly Mr. McCaffrey's heard me say this, is that students will just, you know, do everything electronic. And the other fear I guess I have, and it, you know, certainly dates me, but I think maybe even dates all of us really, is that I remember librarians and teachers saying, honest, you know, powerful message, don't believe everything you read. But for us, it was everything you read. You know, so I mean, that was the thing. You can't, you know, read something in a magazine and think that's true, or you can't read something in a book. You have to keep thinking and you have to keep processing. And what scares me about kids and computers now is that, in libraries, we can screen a little bit of what's in there and what isn't. I mean, I'm sure we do when we purchase books. You know, we don't necessarily get the real fringe stuff in our school libraries. I would presume probably we don't. I mean, typically, I think school libraries don't have some of the craziest stuff. But, and obviously case in point in terms of what we're all looking at this week, as media specialists and hopefully all our teachers are teaching powerful messages, which is don't believe what you're seeing on the internet. Oh my God. So, that's something that we were taught in a different context when we were younger. And I imagine, I'm older than all of you, but I imagine you all came up the same way, which is don't believe everything you read. So, I think that Waukesha one is great in so many ways, but it scares me in that it will keep kids away from books unless we fight that and work so hard, as you said with Jill Anderson and what you're doing, to make sure they know that there's a difference between sitting and staring at a screen and actively processing a book, as well as what are the limits of this technology. And I think we owe it to our kids powerfully to teach them that. I was glad in your presentation, and thank you for that, to see things like you used the word integrated. And I think the best example are things like you talked about, where, and again, we have to have librarians on the spot at schools to help teachers integrate what their messages are, what their curriculum is with the books in the library. Because if that's not there, it's much easier to just open your screen and there you are, that's it. So it's a great concern I have in terms of our district and what message we're not able to give. And the integration in terms of working with teachers in terms of, oh gosh, we've got a bunch of books in the library that would really help what you're doing, and that proactive kind of librarian role, which I think you all probably embrace, I'm sure is hard, but I think it's absolutely vital, especially in this, day and age. So I guess that's probably my message, and I know I'm kind of on a soapbox about it, but,
okay.
it just concerns me so much, the whole idea of don't believe what you see on the screen, and also, is there a way to go to a book and read that, and, I mean, obviously, we can all get books online, and I do when I travel, I read books on my iPad, but it's still different, and I'll just end with this, and I think we talked about this a month ago, and you probably have seen this study. I know Ryan has, when I talked about it. I think we need to emphasize to kids that there are just a lot of limits to this technology, and I know just because I teach at the university, this study was just pounded into us in the last 2 months that Princeton University did. I know, Ryan, you said you read it, that students who take notes in class, write it down, take notes, they remember what they wrote. Students who have an iPad or laptop in front of them in class, they don't remember what they're taking notes at. And I just think that we owe it to our kids to get these messages out. Otherwise, they'll think that we in this district are all just bowing down before this big screen. And everything on the screen is true, and everything that you can learn in life, you can learn from a screen. I mean, it just drives me nuts. So, I mean, obviously, that's my soapbox and my crusade. But thank you, for what you're doing. And I'm just hoping in our district we can get more of you out there into carrying this out. That's certainly another. I've been pounding the table for a long time about getting music back, and so this will be one of my new crusades.
Ryan, do you want to add something?
Actually, appreciate the team coming in. Actually, when I got a chance to talk with Jill and Margaret, they searched me out, and one day we had a chance to meet. I think I was late. I usually am late, but I got there. And really what was interesting was not just the two of them, and you see more people on the team, and there's more that aren't here tonight, doing a job to really, I think media centers and the specialists in there have had to really be an advocate for their role, because times have changed. And what we want to preserve of what's worked in the past, and what's worked with books, and what's worked with good learning, and what works with that is something that we're trying to preserve. And that's where we even came up with the title of the top 10 things that you may or may not know, because there's some things that we think are going to always carry on, that are just good and foundational to learning and connecting and getting the resources and getting the right research and questioning what you're reading and questioning. But then there's also parts of it that were new, and you saw some things in there about what is this whole digital citizenship world, and what are our students navigating now, and how did Waukesha 1 fit into this center now? How are our teachers collaborating? And I think everyone has examples of that, and that's what we're that's sort of how we got it to the bright light stage, because we want to continue to keep the light on the power that can exist in these spaces, and not have it be a spot where the lights are off in the building, so to speak, or where it's a place that has an old connotation and not a new, or just or vice versa, or just a new connotation without some of the tried and true things that happen there. So I guess I wanted to
Thank
point
you,
that out,
Ryan,
is
for
because
saying that.
as the two of them advocated for that, and I know as everybody advocates for what's happening there, I think it was important, and we carefully even discussed the title that you may or may not know, because we wanted to,
Sure.
some of it has stayed the same, but also a lot of it has changed. And I think we put in a quick presentation tonight, and maybe in our digital citizenship follow-up that we'll do, and it sounds like that'd be a great need for that. We can actually bring in some classroom teachers that are partnering with the Media Center in new and different ways maybe than they had in the past. Because it's really not even the old stand in line, drop off, check out things and leave. It's really turned into either a place of resource, it turns into a collaborative teaching experience, turned into where things are really taking off differently. So I think, a follow-up meeting with another approach would be good.
That'd be great, Ryan,
And
'cause
one
we need to
final-
know that.
Yeah. One final piece, Todd Gray's not here tonight.
Yes.
He spent middle of the day at West today, meeting with some seniors and some students leaving. And it was interesting, the one quote that he came back with was the students, their advice back to Todd and back to our district was they really wish that they had more time to develop the study and research skills that they think they needed as they were leaving on. So you talk about, that's coming from the voice of the students today at about noon. And again, talking about that, they're seeing themselves as learners, but they're seeing themselves as need to be able to advocate for their own learning and to get the resources they need and question, am I a digital learner? Do I need a book in front of me? Is this research right? How do I, and I saw some of the resources that were there today, EasyBib, and how are they referencing the materials, and is it a quality reference that they're using and other things? So just want to throw a couple of those things at the end because it's great. I get to be more of an observer and a listener when people are really advocating for their role, and it was fun to see how we've continued to transform these environments. They're usually the biggest environment in our building besides the gym.
That's right.
And they usually have the most space, and so
Most materials?
yeah, so it's a chance to look at then what are we going to do with that? So
Very good. That would be an excellent conversation and discussion because it's something that I know this board has felt very, very strongly about ever since, the days when we stopped having elementary programs. Mr. Baumgart?
Yeah, another comment which I think indicates there's still lots of hope for the books. I went along on two of the e-sale studies, and help me, Robert, environmental survey, something, instruction of literacy, or something like that, right? Yep. We actually, pretty close. Anyway, I did that. Now, admittedly, I did it at two elementary schools, so I didn't get into the middle or the high schools to do that survey. But I would say that what we were observing in the two that I visited was far more intent on observing what paper materials were available to the kids and how they were using them than the digital part of it. So there still is being focus on how we're using, at least in the elementary levels, how we're using the printed materials.
Right, and we need both.
Oh yeah, I don't argue that, but and I side with Ellen on some of my concerns. And again, we come from a different generation, but it worked.
Right, right. But I can just tell from my own family that when if there was no librarian when they were in elementary school, then they had to learn this stuff in middle school, and they were just a little behind the eight ball. And their research projects were much more difficult because they didn't have the skills. So, Ryan, we'll talk about that some more. That's a very interesting subject and something we really need to address. Mr. McCaffrey.
Thank you for coming here today, and I appreciate all your work with the Waukesha One and the individualized learning. When I was in school and we would go to the library, of course, the teacher would bring us down there, and the librarian would teach us basically how to research for writing, and obviously we don't have card files anymore, but we'd run through the card files. Do you still teach that? Does a teacher bring them to you, and then you teach the child how to go through the stacks?
Yeah, in the beginning of the year, there's a whole, especially now that they're not getting it in elementary school, we do have to kind of start a little somewhere like that. But it is so much more than just that type of teaching now.
Okay.
I mean, like today, the kids had researched battles of the Civil War in our libraries, and then what they had to do with that information was that they had to make a infographic. And if you don't know what an infographic is, it's basically a pictorial representation of their information. So they not only have to synthesize and figure out what that information they took notes on, they have to put it in a visual presentation. So that is something that I taught them, because the teacher didn't know how to do that, and they never even heard of it before. But that's what my job is to give those ideas to those teachers, because they can't keep up with everything. Yeah,
Right,
so that's why,
right.
it's important that we do.
So research is still a very important part.
Research is
absolutely.
very important,
Very
and they have to know how to cite their sources properly, and, that's all the steps, yeah.
Our stacks are just different.
I know.
There's still stacks, and there's still things in the stacks, but there's things lots and lots of other places,
Elsewhere,
and,
right.
yeah.
And you cover it all.
Yes,
You
we
have
do.
to nowadays.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And
Great.
I was just going to add too, we attend the WEMTA conference, which is the Wisconsin Educational Media and Technology Association Conference. And not this past spring, but a year ago, I went to a session where a UW-Madison professor and a UW-Madison librarian was giving the presentation. And they talked about how there's a freshman orientation class at UW-Madison that all freshmen have to take. And he said to us, please make sure that your students know how to use databases for research purposes. So I really took that to heart, and we really teach our students how to use the databases.
That's great.
And there's a lot of different ones that we have that then they will have at the college level.
If I could just add, also at middle school, we work very hard at note-taking and practicing it, starting with an article, starting with modeling it, scaffolding it, practice, 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 so that when they come in by the middle of that year to do their research project, they feel very confident in being able to read, take notes, and put those notes in their own words.
Very good. I wonder, just in conclusion, I just wonder, who is doing all the ordering? You know, like, there used to be one librarian per building, and they would do all the ordering of materials based on the needs and interests of the students and the teachers. Where does that fall now?
It was us, Jill.
Well, us at the middle and high schools, but yes,
Jill,
but
does
Jill.
all the elementaries, yeah.
Right,
Oh,
and
wow.
so she does all of the elementaries,
Oh,
and
my.
so, like, one of the things that I am proud of as a library media specialist in a building is that I match what teachers
Of course.
are doing.
What our needs are.
What our needs are, what the students are
library should be.
researching, and so we are lacking that at the elementary level. She does her best, but she's not there on a daily basis to meet with the teachers to
Right.
see what their needs are. So
Right.
that's
Right.
a definite issue.
That's a big issue. Did you want to add something, Ellen?
Oh, just to, and I know you want to go, just to take off too on what Pat said, I think both of my daughters, who now are out of high school and out of college, but were told at Waukesha South, as it turns out, that when they did research papers, they could cite maybe one or two electronic website resources, not Google, not Wikipedia. But otherwise, it had to be books. Are you seeing that teacher support for that approach, or are the teachers letting them just do everything electronic?
I actually, I do see the teacher support. I work very closely, and sometimes I have to encourage the teachers, but I have bought enough resources for some of our units. Like our health teacher does, they do a mental illness study, and as long as we have the materials that are the books to support that curriculum research project, then the teachers are more than willing to use the books because they're there, they're available for
Good.
every student
That's
to
good.
use.
That's
So,
good.
but we still use other electronic sources, but we do still have the
But
books
something
too.
like .gov?
A .gov, yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that helps.
And the databases,
More reliable, yeah.
those are the reliable sources that we teach about, and like for each class that comes into my library, on my website, you can go and see, I've got a web page that matches what the unit is for the particular teacher. So you can,
That's
you
great.
yourself can go on there and see the project and then the resources that match up with that
Thank you.
particular unit.
I do teach the same lesson to the 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. When they come in for their research unit, I said, okay, you guys, we're learning about astronomy. You know your topic is black holes. You're gonna start, what are you gonna do? And of course, someone says, I'm gonna Google it. And I said, you're fired. What are you gonna do? And it's middle school, we have fun. So the kids, we go around and they know, we write up on the board a hierarchy. We start with books. The very first resource they have to find is a book. After they find a book, then we go to our encyclopedias, either the print or the non-print, the electronic version. After that, then they go to a database. After the database, then they can go to a website, but first we talk about evaluating websites. Is it a .com, a .gov, a .edu? So at the middle school, we're hammering it on the kids. They know how to evaluate the resources and what the hierarchy should be.
Well, thank you very much for sharing all the wonderful things that are going on. Did you have something you wanted to add, Karen?
Yes, thank you, Barbara. Thank you all. I had a call today from a concerned parent, and I wish I could have followed up with her more, but I actually didn't know that we would be on this I was in the sun today, so I'm losing my words. She was very concerned because a coffee shop is going into a library, taking half of the space, and they're putting in a coffee shop at one of the high schools. Does any of you know about that?
That's me. We don't have a coffee shop going in. It was, we tossed it around, and it was in an original plan. The issue around that is, first of all, I'm not sure that's legal under the health and school lunch stuff that's coming through, and so I've asked for help in researching that because I don't know how that fits in with all of the school lunch and what's available in schools. That was one of my really strong concerns. What the space has become is a food-friendly area. High school kids bring food everywhere, and it's a mess. Let me tell you, around books and technology, it's a mess. So we're creating a food-friendly area. At this point, we don't have plans, and we've heard this rumor all semester long when we were first tossing ideas around. The idea of a coffee bar was thrown in there, that it might be run by something like DECA or one of the foods classes or something like that. At this point, it's, like I said, it's a food-friendly area, just so that we're not ruining new carpet and furniture that we're redoing over at West this summer.
Ryan?
Karen, just to answer that on a big picture too, one of the pieces that we've been talking about, and you might have picked it up on the presentation, was the media center has turned into less of a come in and be quiet place, and really more into designed to be more of a collaborative zone, or even architects would describe them as areas where you want people and ideas to bump into each other so that conversations start, and so less of a focus on coffee or even food is really the focus of what's the function of it now, and does the design meet that? So a design of quiet rows and just sort of in a hush environment really isn't the goal anymore, and it's really a spot to have where classes can come in, students can share ideas. It's almost the opposite of what it used to be. You used to be able to rent out a room to go talk with a team of 4 in a library, and it's almost the opposite where you're renting out a room you can close the door and have a small quiet spot for studying. But really the function is to allow more collaboration and more ideas, and people have used the term, we want it to feel like a Starbucks, which is sort of pulled into not wanting to get into a partnership with Starbucks or anything, but the feel that it's a comfortable spot where you can get into a conversation, where you can collaborate with other people. And so sometimes the association of food, bubble gum, soda, water has made its way into it, but that's not the goal or the driving idea. The driving idea is a collaborative environment, access to resources, materials, and access to teachers. So. But I can see how it got out like that, because I've even heard staff talk about wanting it to feel like a Starbucks, and that could easily lead a student or a parent to say, you're putting a Starbucks in the school, and we're not.
And
Thank
it's
you for
also
that.
not going to be half of the space either.
Yeah.
That space is roughly a quarter of the space.
And my favorite slide of all, not surprisingly, is where you had the young, I think they were all young men, sitting, some of them with their feet up on a coffee table, and they were all sitting in these comfortable chairs, just looked like they were quietly and happily reading. And I thought, I hope you didn't stage that. I hope that was.
Come over anytime you want.
I would invite you to come
Oh, good, because it looked
anytime.
so
We don't
great. It just
stage
was great.
things.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I think we'll draw this discussion to a close, and thank you very, very much. Please stay in touch with us. Please feel free to ask questions, bring forward concerns, as we will to you, because we want this to work well in our district.
Thank you for
very
having
much.
us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're fortunate enough tonight to have two bright lights. Ryan, take us into the next one. This is going to be a very interesting bright lights. We're traveling tonight. We're going to France.
Yes.
I'm going to turn it over right away. Just a reminder, if you're going to speak tonight, make sure you push the button that'll turn on the microphone and pass it around. But really, this group has spent some time getting out of Wisconsin around spring break, and Wisconsin was not the place to be this winter or
No
spring
kidding.
break. So they're lucky on a lot of different accounts, but coming back from France, we have some great stories to tell. So if you could take us away and do some introductions, that'd be great.
So, this one on, yes, okay, bonsoir. I brought 3 of the students here tonight, and they're gonna do most of the talking about our,
Can you introduce yourself?
oh, I'm sorry. My name is Debbie Bowilgus, and I'm the French teacher over at West High School. In August, I came in front of the CNI committee to get approval for our trip to France. The difference of this trip compared to other trips that we've taken in the past are the students actually lived with French families, and then after 6 days with the French families, then we met back up together and we traveled to Paris and spent 3 days in Paris. It was a very successful trip. The students did a lot of work ahead of time, meaning connecting with their families and knowing the students and the moms and dads and brothers and sisters with whom they stayed with. And I brought them here to tell you a little bit about it. We'll have some pictures in the background that we just put together. So I'll let them tell you a little bit about their experience or what they enjoyed the most about their trip.
Great. Take it away.
And you have to introduce yourself.
Take us on a trip.
Sure. Hi, I'm Nikki Kajawa. Sorry, I'm a senior over at Waukesha West, and I was a part of this trip of 9 students that were able to go to France.
Who did you say?
My host family, there was the oldest daughter, her name was Mathilde. She was 16 years old, and she also had a younger sister named Clarice, and she was, I believe, 13. They stayed with their mom over in Chartres, and then their father lived a little bit out of the way, so we stayed with her mom. I attended school with her for 4 days, which was an experience. The classes were very long. The teachers spoke very fast. And I did my best to understand as much as I could. So do you guys have anything to say about school?
Yeah. Okay, my name is Juliana Dodd, and I'm a junior this year, and I also go to West with Madame and Nikki. And I went to France over spring break also, and it was really cool. I stayed with a girl named Marion and her mother and her brother Guillermo, who was a couple years younger than Marion and I. I also went to school for 4 days, which was very interesting because definitely like any student here, going with different students, you're going to have a different experience. So it was just really cool because we all came back and we were all talking about all our different experiences and our different stories. And so there's just like a ton of stuff we could talk about, but it was really cool. And then we also toured in Paris for 3 days, which I really enjoyed because we went to the Louvre, and I am an art history student, and it was just really cool for me to see a lot of the paintings that I had just talked about the week before we left in class, and that was actually probably my favorite part of being in Paris. So that was really neat.
Hello, my name is Kelly Schwantes. This year I am a sophomore, and I went to France. My host family, my host father was a history teacher, and my host mother was a German teacher. I found that very interesting. I had 2 teachers for host parents.
And where
And-
did you get to go? Where did your family take you?
On Sunday, the day after we got there, we went to the Chartres Cathedral. That was really awesome. I ran into Jack, who is not here today with us at the meeting, and I talked to him a little bit.
Got to go to Normandy, too.
I did get to go to Normandy. That was on Monday. The host father took me up to Normandy. I thought that was really cool. He is a history teacher, so it makes sense. And I went through the cemetery and I found a few people from Wisconsin. I found a few guys. But in no way did I have the time to go through all 9,000 plus gravestones to find all of them.
The interesting thing is that all the students, even though we all landed in the same city, speaking of D-Day, but, and we all went off into our families, we didn't see each other, or some of the kids saw each other, some of them
Yeah.
didn't, because they all attended the same school, but once we all got back together, every student had a different experience. And so the train ride back from Chartres to Paris, they could not stop talking about, I got to do this, I got to do that. So Kelly was she is the only one that got to Normandy, which was, again, anything this family did for you, all the students were very grateful and very kind and gracious. But some of the kids got to go to Versailles, some students Juliana got to go to another castle. And everybody had a different experience. The one thing that I noticed is their language improved in 6 days. I can't imagine if they were there longer. The confidence that they've gained. And right when we got back, we were watching a video off the news, and Juliana, I said, turn to your partners, what did you understand? And she starts talking, she says, I can't believe I understood everything that he said. So it was like a light switch went off in their heads, and that was, of course, the most gratifying thing for me to see.
Oh, I was gonna quick talk about my host family a little bit more. I didn't finish up with that. My host parents actually had 4 children. Only 3 of them were present. The oldest son, his name is Rudolph. He is 24, and at the time he was in China. I am unsure what he was doing there. And there was a 21-year-old daughter. Her name was Daphne. She was there for a few days. The younger daughter, she was 16, and her name is Iphigenie. She was the one that took me to school. And the youngest son, his name is Lothair. He was 13, and he plays the violin, which is the same instrument my younger brother plays. I found that really interesting.
Yeah. So here's a couple just shots of us traveling, and maybe Juliana or Nikki or Kelly can mention.
Yeah. So the first thing that I remember having to look back to when we were traveling was all of the train vocabulary and all the plane vocabulary, which we learned in, was it French 3 or French 2?
I don't
Three.
Very, very long time ago. So that was hard to remember, but it was really cool seeing how everything was very different, how everything was, and it's one of those things where, like, all the stuff is going to be in a different language, but then when you get there, it's like, oh my God, it's in French. Oh my God. So that was something.
And then because of we've gone through the French, but we get it. We get most of it. Me personally, I thought I wasn't going to get about 80% of it, despite this being my 3rd year of French, but I got most of it. That was awesome.
So it was really cool because we got there, and on the last slide you saw the Bienvenue à Paris, and that's just welcome to Paris, really cool. We're all like, it's the sign we first see, take a picture. And then some of these pictures are at the airport, train station, and on the train, and it was just definitely really interesting. And the school was also interesting that these pictures up here now are from. And they actually did have lockers, which is rather uncommon in France, but they weren't like ours where they keep all their books in them. They just like go to them maybe like once a week, maybe just to keep their lunch there sometimes, or if they want to keep like a house key there. Yeah, and that was really cool. And they also had 2 buildings, and the schedules were very different in that they might have a class like in one room with a teacher one day, but then the next day would be in a different room in like the other building, which was really strange for me.
And another thing that I thought was strange is their class periods, depending on which classroom their class took place in. The class would run for either an hour long to 2 hours long, with possibly a 15-minute break in between the 2-hour-long class. Also, another thing which was very strange was how a lot of the students were all in different, how I describe them, are like different like courses. There's three main...
They're like tracks.
Yeah, three main tracks. There's a science and math, a history, like social studies one, and then also like a language one.
Yeah.
My host sister was in the math and science, where she would have the majority of her hours spent at school would be geared towards her math and science. And they'd start school at 8 and then they'd end school at 5. So a very long day of school with very long hour classes.
But they do have a 1 hour long lunch, so they generally go home or go out for lunch. My host sister was actually in the language, so she was taking 5 different languages. So I sat through some German and Russian, which was very strange because it's like they're teaching it in French, a different language that I don't understand, and it was just going so far over my head. But I had another girl in our group who was in all my classes with me, except for English. So that was really interesting.
And I'd also just like to add something real quick. With my host sister's schedule, she might have a couple of hour-and-a-half long classes, but then had this block where she wouldn't have anything. And then later in the day, she would go back to school, do another class, and it's really strange how their schedules are set up.
Yeah.
Did all of your host siblings speak English?
Yeah, generally everyone in France speaks English
Yeah.
pretty well. But I know a lot of times while I was there, I made the effort to speak French and not expect people to speak English to me at all.
Right.
And I got a lot of compliments on that, and I'm sure Nikki and Kelly heard the same thing. A lot of compliments on that where they're like, oh, your French is very good, because a lot of times they hear people, Americans, come and they only speak English, and a lot of French people really kind of spite that to some extent.
Oh, yeah.
That I really sensed, because you'd see other tourists.
And something else that's kind of interesting is sometimes the people, they'll hear you speak French and they'll understand you. But if they know English, they'll start speaking English because of your American accent.
They might say something in English too.
Yeah, like in the math class one day, I was sitting next to my host sister, and I'm speaking French to her, but then the girl behind me starts speaking English.
Yeah, so with me and my host sister, what we tried to do is I would try to speak to her as well as I could in French, and then she would answer me in English, and that's how we communicated, so that she could work on her English and I could work on my French all at the same time.
Yeah.
I know that I stayed with a family as well when I was over there, and we spoke French the whole time, but that was my goal, is to try to improve my French. And at one point, they said, do you mind if we correct you? And I said, sure, just be gentle. So I did get a lot out of it too, that they came back and were very nice, and he was an English teacher, so I got to go to his English class and was the guest speaker there. So we all learned a lot, not just the students, but everybody, and I think all the families were very complimentary of the attitudes and the behavior of our students. And I think the majority got invited back, please come back and see us anytime. So I was really proud that our students managed their behavior and their attitudes, and because it's stressful, because they were by themselves. And it's not for the weak at heart, and they did a great job, so I was really proud of them.
So before you change, this picture.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. This picture is the cathedral right in the city where we stayed. It's a really unique cathedral because it's built on higher land than the rest of the city. It also reflects both the Romanesque and the High Gothic styles, which is really interesting because it's just a very important cathedral for the historical time period of cathedral building, and it's gorgeous inside.
I want to compliment Julianne at one point during the Louvre, our tour of the Louvre. She took the microphone from the tour guide. I want to compliment her history teacher and her art teacher because that's where she sort of fell in love with this, but put all of them together and made a great connection. We were really happy. Mr. Grunsky helped us a lot prepare us because some of this is so overwhelming that we would come in before school and he would prepare, like, this is what you have to do, this is what you have to know about this cathedral. And it really was a collaborative effort from quite a few teachers, whether they knew it or not, and some that did it expressly just for our small group. And that was cool to see.
Debbie, a question that I have, back to the families. Maybe I should remember this from a year ago when you came to us about this. But how did you must have had to find roughly 10 families?
We went through a company that does it for you.
Oh.
So you pay the travel company, and then they make all the arrangements.
Okay, so-
And in the
so they were
meantime, we
screened-
do have kids coming from France over into the Waukesha area that will also host, that will be hosted by Waukesha
And
families.
that company screens them and?
Yes,
Yeah.
screens them as
Great.
well. And that was one of those, if any of these students would have hosted, or if any of the students that are going to be hosting now, they do get a discount if we do this program again, and I hope to continue with it, because again, it wasn't just traveling, it
It was
was,
more than a tour.
it was
yeah.
more than a tour,
yeah.
and it was.
And that's
it
one
was
of the
really
things that we
interesting.
certainly look for.
Right, right.
Yeah.
What city were you in when you went?
We were in Chartres.
Oh,
It's-
Chartres,
Yeah,
okay.
it's about
2 hours south.
2 hours south of Paris, yeah.
Okay. And how long is the school day?
It actually varied on day. Wednesdays, they always get out at noon. That's just a French thing. Every Wednesday, they have a release at that time. But I know my host sister, she got out like at a different time every day because they had some classes that are like optional, and like she had a change in her schedule where she didn't have English at the end of her Monday anymore. So we got out at like 2 that day, and it just, I don't know, it changes. But generally, it's like
8
8
to
to
4,
5.
or yeah, 8 to 5.
8 to 5.
8 to 5. Oh,
Yeah.
wouldn't you
So-
like to be in school at 5
No.
o'clock in the
But
afternoon?
No.
remember 1 hour long lunch and we only get like 25 minutes,
That's
which is
true.
something the
That's
French
true.
kids found astonishing.
And do
Yeah.
they go to school during the summer or not?
Their year, I believe, is longer than ours.
It's
But
their school year's longer.
yeah,
Mhm, I
it like
thought
it
so.
goes. They get off at the end of June, whereas we get off at the
But
beginning.
another thing to add to that is during their winter break, their spring break, they get 2 full weeks off,
Yeah.
whereas
Okay.
we usually get about a week or a week and a half.
Okay. okay.
Yeah.
And did you find that the courses of study were similar to the courses of study in our high schools?
I actually have an interesting thing about this. When I was there in their history class, they were talking about the Vietnam War and everything surrounding that. And it was interesting because I had just studied that in my history class.
Uh-huh.
So I was able to understand like a lot of what the teacher said. And so that was really interesting. And we found that their courses were very similar, but the biggest thing is they don't do collaboration like we do. It's all lectures.
Yes.
That was the biggest
Yes,
thing.
lectures,
that we noticed. And notes.
no games.
No games.
All the
No partner work.
teachers, they don't like write things on the board
Oh,
necessarily.
most of mine did.
Like
but-
like 2 of mine did.
Yeah.
It's all speaking and writing notes.
Yeah.
Writing notes, okay.
But they don't get as much homework as we do, as far as I could tell.
And didn't someone say that that the teacher would tell everyone's grades in front of the entire
Yes.
class?
That was interesting.
Not
They have this big exam called the BAC, and they take that to graduate from high school in France. And my host sister's class had just taken what's called a bac blanc, and that's just like a practice test. And they were getting their grades during English, and the teacher was reading them in front of the whole class. And that was really interesting to me and the other American who was in that class with me, because we were like, that would never happen. Like, teachers would never let everyone know our grade. Like,
Name and all.
name and all. And then they would say, oh, this
No, thank you.
yeah, no. And then
No,
they would
thank
say,
you.
this person is the lowest grade of the class, and then they'd announce their grade and their name, and they would say the highest grade in the class was this, and then they'd announce the name.
But the kids don't care, they're
Yeah.
used to it, that's
Yeah,
just,
they're used
that's
to it.
just how it is.
And
their culture.
everyone knows who the people who are most likely to get like those grades are because they have all their classes with the same group of kids, which was interesting because we got to know the kids in our classes.
Is high school 3 years or 4 years?
It's 3, yeah.
It's 3, okay. And can anybody who, I suppose, qualifies by grade point or whatever, go to college?
If they pass the back, it depends how they do on that test.
Okay,
And so if they do really well, then they can get into the best universities. And actually, a lot of times they take, I can't remember what it's called, it's like a junior school or something, where they'll go another 2 years.
Okay.
And our school actually had that, and you'd see them walking around.
Okay.
And they take another 2 years to prepare themselves for the really good colleges.
okay, good,
So,
interesting,
yeah.
interesting. Okay,
Can I?
yes, please.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
First of all, Nikki, where are you going to go next year? And are you going to do French?
I'm planning on going to UW Stout next year, up north over by the Twin Cities. I'm very excited for that. I do want to continue studying French, and I do want to study abroad more in college as well because me personally, I love that experience. I love going out and just learning about other people's cultures as well as being able to live it and just study from that as well. So that's something I would love to do in college.
I know Stout has junior semester and junior year abroad, so some great programs. Just a quick story, and then I'd like to hear more from all of 3 or 4 of you. It was a number of years ago, before I had children, I took a group to Paris, to France, and it was wonderful. I mean, we were there over a week. Actually, we stayed up near the Moulin Rouge, which is kind of a red light district, so that was really fun. But we got very good at the metro, and we were at the metro station really near downtown one day, true story, and, you know, the train was coming our way, but there was no train there. And we looked over across the tracks, and there was this group from Waukesha. We had no idea. Kit Donahue had taken a group.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
But anyway, so that was very exciting, but then the trains came, and so we said, hello, goodbye, and we didn't see him the rest of the time. But I wanted to ask you what else you did in Paris that really stuck with you, that you really liked.
Okay, you can.
What I really liked is I really liked walking down the streets and seeing all the old buildings because everything in Paris is old. So it's like you're walking through history. And that's what I really liked. I really liked going to all the museums. We went to a total of 3 museums. We went to
Which ones?
The Louvre,
Yep.
Musée d'Orsay,
Which is
Oh,
the newer art
And-
museum.
and Vili, which is a military museum
Yeah.
as
yeah.
well. So we went to a total of 3, which
Great.
was really cool.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
We just, I don't know, we saw a lot of stuff. And I liked both of the art museums because, like I said, I'm just really into art. And that was really cool. And we saw the Arc de Triomphe, which was really cool.
Oh, yes, oh, yes.
Did you try to cross the street there? Or
Oh, no, you go under. There's a
I know, you
tunnel.
go under, I know.
Yeah, there's a
I know.
tunnel. It's, you're not allowed
Yeah,
to.
I know.
I was
Yeah.
required to bring them all home.
So, and we actually went all the way up top in that, and that's really cool.
That was difficult.
And we took a lot of pictures, and
Wasn't it like
I know.
286 stairs or how many
yeah,
stairs were
lots
there?
of stairs.
That's right.
Yeah, one of the first days I did do a pedometer and we walked 24,000 steps.
was
So
like
it
8
wa-
miles.
twen-
It was a
yeah,
lot.
2,400.
And they were all
no,
spiral staircases, which are
24,000
scary.
steps. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
oh my god,
It's like a
there were
single
several.
file line.
There were several times when I was scared that I was gonna fall.
Great.
Especially because at the cathedral at Chartres, I actually went up one of the towers. You can like pay to climb all the way up, which is interesting because you pay to like climb. But anyway, that was really scary because there's like nothing to hold on to all the way up, and you're just like, if I slip right now, I'm going to fall, and like it's not going to be comfortable. I'm not going to come out okay. But it was really cool once you got to the top because you can see all of the little carvings and everything, which is so cool.
Speaking of art, did you go to Montmartre?
Yes, we did.
Because that's a big art
We
place.
just had an afternoon there, but it was still really cool.
We got to see all the aspiring
artists,
artists
yes.
around the
It was
coffee
yes.
so
shops.
busy.
Streets, yeah.
It was very, very cool.
Karen?
Are any of you keeping up with your host families? Are they?
Yes.
Well, I was going to say something. The most memorable, there's two really memorable things from Paris. Well, maybe three. The number one, Paris at night. This is the Paris skyline at night. We went all the way to the top of the Eiffel Tower. It was awesome, seeing
Right
all
at
the lights.
sunset.
Yeah, it was beautiful. And we saw the flashing lights. Every hour at night, the lights on the Eiffel Tower will flash.
And everyone cheers. It's cool.
Yeah. And then we went on the River Seine cruise. That was another
Oh,
really
that's
cool
nice.
thing
That's beautiful.
that we did. And number 3 was the infamous lock
Oh,
bridge.
Yep.
People would buy these locks, open them up, write something on them,
Yeah.
put them on the bridge, and then throw the key into the river.
Normally it's like for your if you get married, you go and do that on your honeymoon. Like we're locking our lives
Yeah.
together. Like we're in love. But
And then
yeah,
you throw
that's
the key into the river, and that's
Yeah.
what you
And
do.
it's there forever. So as far as keeping up with our host families, I know I've been emailing mine, and they don't have prom there, and so my host sister wanted me to send her prom pictures from that, which was just a month ago, and of like our houses and schools, because I know I talked a lot about the differences in houses and school system when I was there with my host sister, and so she just wanted to see pictures of that. So.
Yep. For me, I'm keeping up with my host sister as well, although it's difficult because time difference as well as
That's
just
right,
also I have a lot of like obligations as far as
me
work
too.
and school, so it's hard sometimes to find the time, but I do my best, and as does she, and it's a lot of fun. So I'm hoping next summer I'm able to host her at my house for 2 weeks, so I'm very excited about that.
Did you notice that it was very common that they drank wine with their meals?
My host family didn't as much.
Same
She
as
didn't,
mine.
huh?
My host
Only when we
family
went out one night, but they ordered non-alcoholic for me.
Yeah, for my host family, my host parents may have had wine and stuff, but the kids didn't.
Oh,
The older daughter,
interesting.
Daphne, did. She's 21.
Yes.
So, and that was kind of interesting. And that, of course, we can't have that because we're not 20.
Yeah.
That's right.
My favorite thing about the French dinners, though, were after the main meal, was the cheese.
Oh,
and the bread.
yes.
Cheese
Oh,
and the bread.
yes.
That was the best part of every
Right.
meal, was all
Bread
the
and
cheese.
Everything.
It was so good. That was
Well,
my favorite
Thank
part.
you so much for
It's like
sharing.
this taste you can't satisfy back here because it's
Yeah.
just not the same anywhere you
Oh,
go.
I know it isn't.
I told my host family that Wisconsin is basically the France of the United States because we have a lot of cheese. That's
The
what I
other
told them.
The other thing we noticed, as far as different customs, was the smoking, which I'm sure that everyone's very common. But my host family didn't smoke. I think most of our
they
host
smoke
families
Mine didn't.
sometimes,
No,
right?
mine
Didn't
didn't
have
either,
siblings
but
who
I
smoked. I mean,
saw
I'm
a
sure
lot of
Yeah,
My host
but you
mother
would
did,
see
but
kids just
never-
like rolling
Yeah.
cigarettes in school, which was really strange. 'Cause
Standing
that's-
outside the school
Yeah.
gates before
Smoking.
classes,
Smoking, yeah. There was, like,
smoking
a
as much
spot
as they
where
could before they
everyone-
could go in.
Yeah, and it was just interesting because it was like it was everywhere, and
Yes.
we're just not used to that. And
Yeah, and
Yes.
for my host sister, it was, I was walking with one of her friends up to go buy lunch one day, and one of her friends had a cigarette out, and I was, in my head, I'm like, really? This is really, it's kind of disturbing, because she's only in high school. I don't think she's even 18 yet, and she's already into that.
Well, thank you for listening to our
Thank you.
stories.
Thank you.
And we hope we can go again, and we hope that these students will inspire other students to take the plunge and live with people that they don't know.
Yeah.
It's very commendable that they did
Yeah.
that. So.
I was the only one, it wasn't, who else lived out in the country? I was one who did.
I think
You think
Hannah-
Sarah did? I thought it was Sarah.
Yeah,
I
thank
don't
you.
know. Who
Thank
did?
you for listening. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Merci.
Thank you for the trip. We've enjoyed it. Wow, well, moving along, we have no action items this evening, and we have one presentation item, and that is material review process discussion. Ryan, want to take us through that, please?
have Ron Rivard join me for a little bit, and we might get into a little bit of history here. We also are going to be talking about a topic that is going to have a lot of spillover into policy eventually, because this is written into board policy. But it started with a curriculum conversation, and we wanted to start the discussion here tonight, and then to see where that takes us. But in essence, there was a conversation that came up about material selection, and in question, there was one point. Some material that was in question, and it spurred another conversation that led us to looking at current policies and processes. And we took a close look at policy 6161, which is the selection and removal of educational materials. The last review date was October of 2002, even though there seemed to be a couple of updates. If you look at what's changed since then, we've gotten to a spot where it's you heard it a little bit tonight. It's not uncommon to have book studies. It's not uncommon to have workshop models. Not uncommon to have. We've gotten away from a traditional text adoption
Yes, we
series,
did.
which was a pretty lengthy process in and of itself.
It was.
But it was also a very much more a controlled material. We're getting into the area where supplementary material, this is how it's termed in our policy, is really becoming the norm for almost every educational classroom. Because the way our currently policy talks about if a teacher were to tape something, like the way we used to do with our VCR and rewind it and bring it in, now we've replaced that with modern day of if you were to be looking at open educational resources, if you were going to go and use YouTube for a selection of a video, all those types of things. Teachers are bombarded with a constant array of finding the best materials to supplement their instruction and to bring forward to students. At the same time, that opens us up to making sure that any material that's selected is appropriate and a part of the process. So we wanted to look at it from that lens, which was, what was our current state of practice right now? How has education changed here in Waukesha and around the world the last 10 years in terms of materials? And then what does our policy say? So what we did here tonight was quickly we put together in the packet the current policy 6161. You get a chance to see how that's written and some of the things that still make sense today, and some of the things that we might target. We also put together, it's on this color, I'm sorry, I'm colorblind, pink. On the pink sheet is a draft from, took this from a neighboring school district. They had a draft as well of a process that they use specifically regarding books and literature circle books that may come into question. So this is a process. We brought this as a draft of an example. That's something we'd want to look at. But really, just as an ongoing part of the process, we're sharing both of the policy and a draft tonight as a chance to frame a discussion here with the C&I committee in hopes of getting a larger perspective, and then looking at how do we review some of these things, what kind of committee might we put forward to draft some initial next steps to bring forward to policy. So that's where we're at. Ron has been working closely with, for example, some of the teachers, some of the principals, Stephanie Blue, our humanities coordinator, on gathering some of this information. This really occurred about 3 weeks ago that there was some question regarding this topic. And so we wanted to bring it forward tonight, really in light of material and what's available, and to think that we can control everything that comes across a screen or a library is one thing, but we did want to also make sure that there was a process that involves what is the role of the teacher in selecting appropriate material, what is the role that we play as a school board and as a school district. So
Well,
I'll
it
leave
was
with
a
that.
pretty good system, Ryan, and I would hope and encourage you to see if you can locate it somewhere, in the archives, because it was a very timely system. It took a lot of time. It was teams of people from the building, teachers that were going to use it. C&I people were involved.
And are you talking about the
yes.
textbook adoption?
I'm talking about the
Yeah,
textbook
the textbook.
yeah.
And I think that we have that, and we can find that. But it's also the supplementary material pieces where
Right,
we're finding.
right.
Okay.
But that would be helpful, then we could, see what we used to do and then revise, adapt, throw it out, whatever. But, yeah, there needs to be a system, and we haven't really had a strong one lately. So are you,
Well, we are,
He's back up for questions I can't answer, but technically, no. We've really been a part of this, and just, we both went it from slightly different angles in
At
terms
that
of
time,
policy,
not.
but Ron got a chance to connect with some teachers and some
For
schools on this
adopting
and some
textbooks.
parents throughout the process. So he also put together the initial draft based on some research that was done on this policy. So that's really where.
Right, and really what I'm looking for from the CNI board committee is just some feedback to guide my next steps. So, just actually, Mr. Baumgartner would be on this process, on the pink form, because there's a lot of process outlined in policy 6161, and there's guidelines that are very articulate about removal of items, about complaint, a complaint committee, and about those things that are very detailed, but there's not a lot of detail around what to do with supplementary text, such as literature circle books, different things like that. And really it becomes a capacity issue. When I was contacting other systems, a lot of times they would say, well, it's our library media specialist. And in the back of my mind, I would say, well, one person can't be expected to read every single book that we're putting in the hands of kids. So just trying to take a more thoughtful approach of having a team of people and then coming together and saying, okay, here are some new books that we want to purchase. And look at it in a thoughtful way and review them. And I think the number that I had suggested was about 15 people. That way you could have a minimum of 3 people reading a book to provide some perspective on it before it goes out, but not,
So
by
are you
no stretch.
referring to literature books or textbooks or both?
Literature circle books. These would
Okay.
be more like fictional stories
Yeah.
that kids
Yeah.
are going to read and engage in conversation around.
Okay, what about textbooks? Would that
We,
be-
we have a we have an articulated process for that, but I think as Ryan mentioned earlier, we want to look at some of the wording in that policy just because it is 12 years old, and
Yes.
there's you'll see references in there to on air recordings and different things that now we would probably just do as YouTube, or distinctions between multimedia and text, where now text is multimedia.
Sure.
So I think there's some updating that could be done in that regard if we wanted to examine that. But in terms of the process that we're bringing forward for your consideration, it's primarily the supplementary literature circle
And then we used
circle
to get
text.
the books before they were approved, so that we could have some input in the approval of that. I don't know if you're familiar with that practice or not.
That's actually articulated in the textbook adoption guidelines.
And that
yes.
was helpful, because sometimes, we noted something, and also, the team that presented the books to us would do a readability study on it, so we knew that if it was appropriate for certain grade levels. And
Correct.
then they also looked for things in literature and in the textbooks to make sure that it wasn't racist or sexist or anything like that.
Right.
So, those kind of things. Karen?
Thank you. Ron, I'm going to read number 3 on this pink page. After reading is complete, the team convenes to discuss and make recommendations about whether to purchase the book. What about books that are already in the libraries that might be
Yeah, I think that's this would be written as if it was a new book. I think books that are already in our libraries, we would, if there are questionable books, we would want to review those as well.
Okay.
And that would follow a very similar process, but we want to go back to the complaint procedure,
Right.
which is written in the guidelines of 6160, or the 6160 guidelines, follow up complaint one. And there may be some questions about both of those in place.
Right.
So.
And that's on page 7 if you want to see that. It's the consideration process, it's called.
Right, right. And then a special committee meets and.
Is convened and,
Convened
right, and they all would
discusses
read the
that.
same book in question, correct. And that would be if there were a formal complaint.
Right, right, but there's a
that were
process,
written.
we just don't go and take a book off the shelf.
Correct.
Mr. McCaffrey?
Is this for all grade levels? And the only reason I ask that is because secondary is listed as the educators. Are we planning on getting some elementary school educators in there?
We could certainly do that. I think that was the reason that I wrote that. It was in response to a book that was in our middle and high
okay.
schools.
Okay.
Mr.
So
Baumgart?
I think it could easily just span K-12. I think that's a good point.
One of the things with where we have gone with some of the supplemental materials and what we were hearing earlier tonight, it stimulates me to ask this question, that is the uniformity of what we have in, for instance, the 3 high schools, the uniformity of what we have in the 3 middle schools, is it beginning to get very, very separated, or is there somebody watching to see that we're doing similar things in the similar schools?
That is a great question.
And if that's the answer, I figure, which it is, I think maybe we should make sure we're addressing that.
I think we're getting a whole lot tighter with the standards
Yes.
as this has come in about what goals we want students to meet.
Yes.
But the process of getting there is becoming a little bit more varied, where I think in the past, the process, when you have a textbook, the process was probably, the standards were a little lighter and you weren't quite sure where you're going, but the process was you were following a text or a series that took you through. So it's sort of that shift from, well, if this is a standard, it's almost by whatever means are working, we're gonna help to get there, where it used to be, here was a turn the page, here's where we're at. That's kind of easiest way to describe it.
Sure, and I'd also add to that and say that literally each month there are hundreds of new titles that are out. You try to stay current as you can for engagement purposes, for students to be engaged in things and topics that they like, and some students particularly like an author and then can't wait for the next book from that author to come out. So it will be probably one of those constant uphill battles where you're trying to keep up as best as we can, just because there is such a wide variety of books that are available and continue to be available.
But there's a wide variety of books between schools too, right?
I think it's a fair statement. Yes, absolutely. There's variance.
Would make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Did you want to say something, Dr. Landrum?
Yeah, thank you. And Ron, thank you. On page 2, I think the criteria are really very, very good, very strong. So just to compliment you on that. And then just a question. I think at some point when I read in one of these places, that you would kind of update us. And I would be real interested to see, even if it's just a list, you don't have to do justifications, on, the middle school, elementary, secondary, particularly secondary for my interest level, what are some of the books that have been adopted? And, because it says somewhere here, I think you might let us know. But also, I bet removal isn't very common.
No, it is not.
I'd be very interested to see if we remove and which books and why. We do.
I haven't dug into that, but based on the conversations that I had, just with teachers who had been around, there was not one person that could tell me when one was completely removed from our library, of the people that I spoke with.
Okay, but you thought there was one removed?
Well, that's why we're bringing this up right now, is because of the content of that one book.
Mm-hmm.
Book.
There was a book that was brought. There was no complaint that was made other than something that was surfaced about the questionable material in a book. So we looked to see what was available for our students, and at first there was some questions surrounding whether or not it was in a library or if it was purchased outside of school. Some of the copies we found out were actually purchased outside of school, and then there were a few copies that were in our library. So we didn't take them out of the hands of students when they were due back. We took them back pending this conversation here to articulate a process. So we're not removing them, they're just not able to be checked out at this moment.
Wow. This really disturbs me. I'm sorry.
It's an
Can you,
horrific book.
well, that may be your judgment, and I don't even know the name of the book because we're not talking about the specifics here. But is part of the process bringing it forward to us and telling us why? Before something's just removed? I mean,
It has not been removed. I just want, I want to be clear on
Students
that.
can't have access to it, so it
They
sounds
were
like-
due, well, they were due back on June 1st, and it's the end of the year, and libraries collect all the books by June 1st.
No, I know, but that's dodging the point.
No,
You're
I-
saying-
No, there
It's
wasn't.
not- We can't get it.
No, we actually, the question that came in, it took a little time to do some research on the book, because there was some,
Yeah.
it just took a little time to figure out where and what and how, and then by the time there was some information gathered, we wanted to make sure how many copies of the book were out there, who had some of the books, and then when we just connected with each school when the books were returned, seeing as we were coming at the end of the year, we wanted to know where those books were and how they came in. And what we found were some students were buying certain books, some were a part of a class and a conversation, some were a part of the library. So it was really, and this brought forward the bigger question to review, which was, how do all books, are books in lit circles, and that's where this piece came from, was there a process for all of our books that are going through there? And that's the question that we want to bring forward was, what's the process? And is every book going through that process? And so that's where digging in and looking at this piece got us to here, so.
Okay, can you outline the process then? Because maybe I didn't see that, but what's the process for removing a book?
Well, the process for removing a book is when a formal complaint is filed,
Correct.
then the detailed process.
That would be on page 7,
That's
where it
what I
would
was
start.
Yeah.
Okay.
Big deal.
And that's a big one. We didn't,
Oh, yeah, there it
we're
is.
not into that process at this point. With this one the district has been in the past, but with different things, I'm not that I've been a part of, but we know that the formally has been a part of in the past. But at this point, the question that came into hand was to the book of this, and that's what brought forward the Lit Circle conversations, and that's where we're starting to look at what fits what material from library media materials and other pieces. So.
But this is on the front burner right now because you said there's a specific, as yet unnamed.
Yeah, why is it unnamed?
Why is it unnamed?
Can
I
we say
don't
what it
understand
is?
it.
Are we concerned
I can't
about
hear you.
naming the book?
No.
Okay.
I mean,
no,
I
I'm
can-
just
I mean,
wondering.
I can tell you
I
the
don't
book.
know. I mean, it's-
The book is called Looking for Alaska.
I've heard of that.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously not by Jeff London.
My blood is boiling that is still in our schools. That it is at our middle school level and that is at our high school level. That book has up to 100 swear words in it. It has step-by-step 2-page process of oral sex.
Consideration process.
It is, my daughter's in middle school, my son is in middle school. If they ever checked out that book on their own, I would be appalled. But actually, this book was given to students from a teacher. There weren't enough copies at the South Campus, so she went to another library and got those copies. That parent I have spoke with on the phone, I thought it was out. I thought that's what happened, but if that is not a formal process to go to the teacher, to go to the principal, to call a board member, I went to the school, I don't know what a formal process is. I
It's
cannot
right here.
believe.
It's right here.
But does she know that she's not doing it formally, is what I think she probably thought, okay, I did my proper steps, and so that's why we're talking about this right now, and just so you know, Ellen.
Well, I
No,
guess
I
we
wanted
don't,
to know.
we don't remove books. It's my understanding, we don't remove books, and the librarians are here. We don't remove books unless it goes through the consideration process. Well, we just don't go in the library and remove books. Would you, any one of you librarians like to respond? But we just don't remove books.
We welcome the challenge. I'm just going to say that because if we really want to have a good conversation about the book, and I agree, it's a book we need to have conversation about. We were preparing for that because we'd heard about it, and we have materials ready to go. Why we want to have, and I don't know why, it probably never went through that committee. You're here from South, the parent never talked to you. We would have advised any parent who had come to us with a concern, we would have gone right to the policy, asked them if they would like to submit a formal challenge. There's a form that they need to fill out. In fact, we sought it out because it's supposed to be kept in the principal's office. In my school, we couldn't find it. I think my secretary called down here. So we were truly expecting it, and I encourage it because that's the venue we want. We want to get, and if you look at the people who are on that committee, on the challenge committee, those are people we want to bring into the process and say, okay, well, let's look at this in a big picture. And so I hope that if there's still concerns about it, that we go through the process, because it's, I wouldn't want to go through it with every single book, but I think when we talk about books that have situations that are not always, just the sort of nice things that we like to read about, I think it's a really good idea to have a conversation about it with all of those views in mind. How am I teaching this in class? You even talked to a health teacher about it, because we had that concern as well because of the sexual nature of the one scene.
And, right, and I understand that, and I'm glad to look at this review process, because on page 10, It says step 5 in parentheses, step 6, but in parentheses, step 5, it looks like nothing's removed. It says, without an appeal to the board in writing. Okay, that really was almost the essence of my question.
Okay,
So-
I'm sorry.
No, no,
I
and I don't think I
misunderstood.
made it clear, so.
Okay.
In looking through all this, so before a book is removed, we, the board, would be notified. We would look at the pros and cons and the consideration committee process and so forth, and then we would make the final judgment.
Right, you would render the decision. We would just provide you information, yes.
Okay. Because I taught at a school first out of college, little tiny Wisconsin farm school, and everybody wanted Catcher in the Rye taken out of the library.
Right.
That was a
It's
little while
it's a,
ago.
well, it's a popular,
Yeah.
it's a popular volatile book,
I
if that makes
understand.
sense, yeah.
I've heard of it. Thank you.
One of and the piece why this part was researched and found was because of, and I mentioned this earlier, the way that instructional materials are now being used is that I think there does need to be a larger conversation
Yes.
regarding the literature circle discussions, because it's not the traditional textbook for book. They're coming in at a more frequent rate, or they're coming in as a part of going to a library, and they're coming in, and students are working on some of their skills of reading or in their language arts classes and with their teachers as a part of more of a selection in what they're reading, and then having those discussions, which is different than maybe what I think we're used to or some of the policy states. So this comes from, like I said, a neighboring district as a draft. This is how they're doing it at their high school and their selection material, so that it's a little more, it happens more on a more continuous basis. Bob Anthony, I was talking to him about it at elementary level with this as well. You'd be talking about it, every teacher having 100 to 200 books almost per semester in an elementary classroom of materials that are circulating through their classroom library. So it's just a new ballgame, and that's where, when we looked at some of this conversation, we tried to do some of the background on that, but we also want to do some background of looking forward and our current model, which is we need to have something that's more regular, that allows for this conversation to occur on the front end whenever possible.
So this will go to our policy committee for adoption, I take
That's
it?
where, well, I think it has to go to policy for a conversation of.
Right.
So tonight we wanted the discussion
Right.
because it had a CNI component to it.
Correct.
But technically this would fall under policy and maybe adding this to a guideline piece in terms of more formal review of in-class literature book circles or other pieces that are discussed. Just because there's a more of a frequency, and even as Karen just mentioned, having a teacher assign, sometimes there's a choice, or but it's not as precise as it once was.
Well, there's two members of the policy committee here on this committee. You aren't thinking of just discarding the whole
Oh my God,
policy,
no.
adapting it,
Correct.
adding some, okay,
And we didn't even get to the elementary level.
yeah.
We didn't even get to the elementary level, which, again, we might want to have something looked at. We just looked at this from a secondary, but in an elementary classroom, you're going to get just as much variety of material coming in. And, you get a group of students, and Ron talked about engagement before, get a new book series that's out and that comes hot for a third, fourth, fifth grade student. It's on the market. There's an author. There's something they're following and want to read. Again, those make it their way into their classrooms pretty quickly these days, because those classrooms want to have books that are of interest to students. But again, being on the front line of that, we're going to want to make sure that we're a review of titles and having that go through some sort of
Right, I mean,
process.
we
So.
wouldn't want a librarian tomorrow to go and take a book off the shelf, or a principal to go and take a book off the shelf, because there is a legal process that we have to go through. Okay. Just wanted to guarantee that we stay within our policy and within state laws, et cetera. Okay. Anything else?
No, other than if there's I guess the next question is moving to policy, talking about
Okay.
some of the next conversation in this, in case we just want to
Okay.
add something into
So
this.
you're gonna send this policy?
Yeah, we'll do some more
Okay.
writing and work on that.
Okay. All right. Anything else that you want to ask, Mr. Rivera?
No, I appreciate the questions back and the
Okay.
feedback.
Okay. Very good. Okay. That's it then. We have a meeting on Monday with the CNI team, where we're going to talk about agenda items for the next school year. So if you have any suggestions,
This coming Monday?
I'm going to meet with Ryan.
Oh, you two have a
Yeah.
meeting. Yes,
Ryan
exactly.
and
Um,
Bob.
I didn't know about that one, okay.
Yeah, technically, since we don't have a meeting in July,
Right.
one of the things that we handed out last August was the binder that tried to give a foreshadow of the year. We're just crafting the 14-15 foreshadow, which will have a sample draft of possible agenda items. We wanted to have like a regular routine of visiting some main topics, but by all means, if there's topics that come up from other groups, we're just going to try to stay monthly on that. So really wanted to make sure we hit some of the most frequent topics that we can. Also wanted to make sure that when we do certain things that we're putting them in the right spot. So obviously an action item is something that requires action, or bright lights, as we really look forward to bringing some of the exciting things happening in the classrooms. We want to make sure that we're getting a chance to get a variety, but the intent of bright lights is to showcase some things. Sometimes we might have bright lights that lead to a discussion. Other times we might have action. So we're just going to try to foreshadow as best we can, but we know that we did that last year. As you can see, that binders are a year old at this time, and we'll try and get the most current copy to you in August.
Whatever recommendations I made are certainly not cast in concrete, and we welcome your suggestions of anything that you'd like to have us consider for discussion for next year. Yes?
Can I have a binder of even the old binder to just know what's coming?
Well, as of about right now, the old binder is out of date, but I can get a copy of that to you. What we're really doing is trying to update for next year. So we'll get it to, we're going to be working on it over the next month, and our target date to have it completed. It really establishes the goals for the CNI team and the work that we're going to be doing next year, as well as some key target points of the work. And then we also have a section there for board and agenda development. So we just kind of, as you're looking ahead, seeing maybe what's coming, but also if you see something that's not on there, it really should open the door to sending myself or Barb a note to make sure we're getting some things on.
I've already asked, about a binder for you, but the answer was that this is old and we're going to put a whole new one together. But do we have an old one, Mary Jo? Do you know? No, I didn't think so.
So it's not like August is in the end of that. We're done.
It ended in June.
Got it.
Well,
But
Mr. Baumgart is offering his, if you'd like to.
Oh, no, that's okay.
now, as of right now, it's a year in review. It's like a yearbook.
Yes, Dr. Langell, I like that idea.
And really, those are the things that we want to do our best in planning those out. So we look at what months are, right now, like, for example, every 4 months wanting literacy and updates on data being on there, so we tried to stagger it so there's at least a process, but we know that there are things that are specific requests or things that come up that we want to see.
And then there's a test mid-year, and we'll ask you what's on page 35.
Yes, we hide secret words in there too. Yes.
Okay, I guess then that concludes our meeting for this evening. We will not be having a July CNI meeting, so mark your calendars. The next CNI meeting will be Tuesday, August 5th, 2014 at 6 o'clock, and most of the summer is over with, and we're just beginning. So thank you very much for your participation tonight and for the past school year. We've had some great discussions and some great leadership, Brian, from you and your CNI directors. It's been a good year. Thank you. They've been great people to work with, and we'll continue to do that. So thank you very much.